Yeah, I think there's a problem with Skype again. Oh, why do they have to do this to me? All right. No, that's not going to work. All right, Curtis, take over. I'm going to sign out and sign back in. Be right back. Yeah, I hopefully am. And I got an echo. Son of a bee. I am. And I don't know what the heck is doing.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key. I'm sorry, but I did not hear you press at least 4 digits of your PIN number. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye. Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
To start your show now, press 1.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Not free, you have to fight for it. Every generation has to step up to the plate and fight. Do we have you back, Annie? Annie? I guess you're still working on it. Check 1, check 2. But anyway, we will prevail. I have no doubt. I do believe this republic is ordained.
Curtis, you got me now?
Almighty.
Curtis, you got me now?
Yep, but you are echoing. A lot of reverb.
Okay. Again, I got myself in my ear.
How's that now?
This is crazy. Everything's feeding back on me.
Well, looks like Annie may just have to call in. But today...
Curtis, can you hear me now?
Yes.
You got me now?
Yep. You called in?
Yeah, this is crazy. I have to call in using my landline, but I'm also signed in on Skype, but I can't use Skype because it reverbs and comes back in my ear.
Wow.
We're getting off this platform as soon as I can. This is crazy.
I guess it's time for the dedication.
Well, yeah, we had a few minutes to do that, and I apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties, but everything was working the other day. We did the broadcast with Vicki Tompkins on Wednesday, Moms Across America, which I'm now part of. Everything worked fine, and then today we come on to Blog Talk Radio, and everything messes up. So forgive me, folks, but those that have been patiently waiting for me, we are dedicating our show today to Police Officer Horren Randy Tyler of the Madison Police Department out of Mississippi. His end of watch was June 1st of this year. And this is from the Clarion Ledger. Let me first begin with, I apologize, got myself a little mixed up here first. Okay, this is also from the Police Tribune. And it reads, Madison Police Department Officer Horren Randy Taylor was murdered in the line of duty on Thursday, June 1st, while trying to apprehend an armed suspect who had taken 2 women hostage. Brandon Police Department Chief Wayne Dearman said the incident began at approximately 1:20 a.m. on June 1st, when the BPD received a report that a man was attempting to break into a home at Terrapin Hill Road in the Cross Gates neighborhood. WLBT reported that the residence was occupied by 2 women. Investigators said the suspect, 22-year-old Gabriel Matthew Wilson, was in a domestic dispute with his ex-girlfriend at the time of the home invasion. The caller told police Wilson had a bulletproof vest, handgun, and a rifle, Chief Dearman said. One of the women managed to escape after the police arrived at the scene, but Wilson barricaded himself in the home with the second woman for hours. Police were able to use drones and other tools to monitor the suspect's location and condition while he was inside the house. Chief Dearman said the BPD Assistant Chief Marshall Pack negotiated with Wilson over the phone for hours. The suspect allegedly told Assistant Chief Pack he wanted glue sticks and water. Wilson eventually agreed to release the second hostage. We did get some compromise from him, and as we gave him what he asked for, she was able to run out. The second hostage was not physically injured. Wilson still refused to surrender and ultimately exchanged gunfire with police at approximately 6 a.m. A BPD officer was shot in the left side of his body during the shootout, leaving him with serious injuries. He was immediately rushed to a hospital and was later listed in stable condition. Pafford Brandon Fire Department were on the scene, were able to get him in an ambulance. Chief Dearman told WLBT, "Without that resource being available to us immediately, we could be facing another loss of life. I'm grateful that we're not." In the meantime, the NPD Special Response Team, SRT, responded to the residents as part of a mutual aid request, according to the Officer Down memorial page. Wilson's mother also came to the scene to try to convince her son to surrender. Chief Dearman said another exchange of gunfire occurred at approximately 9:30 a.m. Officer Tyler was fatally struck during the shootout, as was the suspect. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is handling the investigation. Officer Tyler joined the MPD 7 years ago after retiring from his position as chief of Ridgeland Police Department. He served with the RPD for 27 years. In addition to being a member of the MPD SRT, Officer Taylor was a supervisor in the MPD's Narcotic Division and also oversaw training for new hirees. He devoted 34 years of his life to his law enforcement career, according to the Officer Down memorial page. Randy will be sorely missed by all of his colleagues, family, and friends, MPD said in release. The Madison Police Department asks for the community support and prayers during this difficult time. The city of Ridgeland said in a statement that the retired police chief will not be forgotten. Mayor Gene McGee, Ridgeland Board of Aldermen, and city staff send their deepest condolences to his family and are thankful that we were able to have Randy as a part of our city family for all those years. And from the Clarion Ledger, hundreds of cars lined the streets of Madison on Friday as people turned out to pay their last respects for a fallen Madison police officer, Randy Tyler, whose funeral procession rode through town, following a funeral open to family and friends and his fellow first responders. His funeral was held at the Parkway Church in Madison, and after the funeral, a motorcade of police officers escorted his body and immediate family members to the Natchez Trace Cemetery in Madison. Tui Tyler, Randy's wife, was dressed in black and was seen entering a vehicle, consoling her children prior to the motorcade. Multiple family members and friends exited the funeral service, still mourning and crying at the loss of Tyler. Law enforcement officers escorted his body into a vehicle. Agencies throughout the state were represented, including a strong presence from the area, with Jackson, Brandon, Madison, Ridgeland, and the Capitol Police all seen in attendance, as well as representatives as far away as Biloxi. Tyler, who would have turned 65 in November, was shot and killed after a domestic dispute in the Coursegate neighborhood of Brandon led to a hostage standoff on June 1st. Born Horren Randy Taylor on June 21st, 1958, to James, Sidney, and Sarah Yeager Taylor. Tyler graduated from the Tri-County Academy in Florida and attended Hines Community College and completed a study in criminal justice. He dedicated and sacrificed his adult life to law enforcement. He began his law enforcement career with the Florida Police Department and later moved to the Canton Police Department. For 27 years, he worked his way through the ranks to the Ridgeland Police Department, where he served as chief of police until his retirement, which proved to be short-lived. Randy died a hero. He was one of many law enforcement officers who have sacrificed all. After 27 years of law enforcement, Randy's watch ended on June 1st, 2023. Today's show is dedicated to Randy Taylor. It is also dedicated to all of the brave men and women that serve as first responders in this nation, be they law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency service, and also to all of the brave men and women that serve in our military, from the birth of this nation through today and into our promising history. We dedicate with this song from Tiffany, Souls of Our Nation. Police Officer Randy Tyler, stand down. Your end of watch. We will take it from here. May God bless. Unfortunately, because of my problems with Skype, I wasn't able to do the dedication song. So, instead, we will give Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace appeared the hour I first believed. And when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've less days to sing God's grace than when we'd first begun. We've less days to sing God's grace than when we'd first begun.
Okay, and we're back, Curtis. We're here live on Southern Sense on Blog Talk Radio, SHR Media, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook. Oh, good Lord, I forget half the places I'm now on. It's Substack also, Apple, iTunes. Oh, good Lord, just go to the name of the show, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, especially dealing with Skype and either radio.
Oh, yeah.
Along with my courageous and so wonderful co-host Curtis C.S. Bennett. Oh, good Lord, Curtis. We're waiting for our first guest to call in. And No, I did not get a phone number for her, so she's supposed to be calling in any moment now. Hopefully she will. Otherwise, I'll have to yell at her agent for making her late to the date.
Well,
oh, man. But we have a lot to talk
it's
about.
It's just 1:30.
Nope. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting people texting me while I'm on air, and I'm looking at them stupid. Anyway, we got ourselves a great lineup. Our guest should be calling in very shortly, Jacqueline Toboroff. She's got a great book out called SUPERMOMS Activated, and that's all in capital letters. And it's titled Mama Bears Awakened, Watch Out. Now, I have not yet gotten the book. It was mailed out to me a week ago. And thank you, U.S. Post Office. We pay for all this money for postage, and you cannot deliver. This is government, your government, at work for you. So we're going to have her back also after we read the book. But I did read some excerpts. She turns around and takes 12 women and that have proven to be supermoms in various areas. And then she highlights their biographies and talks about them. And I pulled up some of the women, so I do have some of their biographies with me. And it'd be interesting how she does portray them in her book. And definitely we'll have her back once I do finally get the book in. It is going to be released on Amazon in 2 days, on the 16th. That's Sunday it's being released. And there's a link on the show page to go to it. We also have Dr. Miriam Grossman. She's a psychiatrist, and she's got a book out called Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness, talking about children and how they're being groomed for transgenderism. Then we have our friend, your friend, Ambassador Stanley Escudero. He will be joining us talking about all the madness that's going on in Asia and across the globe, especially in Ukraine. And then Mark Tapscott, his bi-monthly visit is with us today, and he will be joining us. And Hannah Davis from the Heritage Foundation will be back. So we got ourselves a jammed-up show here.
Yeah, it's my first time back in, about 3 or 4 weeks? It seemed like forever.
Yeah, it's been a while. It has been. So hopefully we'll have Jackie here. I got the wrong Jackie here, so I'm looking for... I'm going to have to probably text her to find out what is going on here, whether or not our guest is going to call in.
What is it?
I'm hoping she's not on a different...
Toboroff?
Toboroff?
Something like that.
With the B. Yeah. So just, folks, bear with me. This is actually live radio, and you never know what's going to happen on it. We just deal with things as they come, and we'll just keep on going. I don't know if anyone caught the news lately. A couple of things have been going on. Tucker Carlson may be hooking up with Neil Patel to come up with a new media outlet for him to do the show. That's going to be interesting. We do know he's been using Twitter to broadcast. Matter of fact, he was on Blaze TV earlier. Now, I don't have the Blaze TV on my TV. It's a subscription. I didn't pay for it. So I wasn't able to watch it. But he had a discussion with the current leading GOP presidential candidates, which would be Trump, DeSantis, Cruz, Scott. I think Vivek is supposed to be there. I clicked on it to watch it later. But people check out Blaze TV because Tucker Carlson was holding a discussion with those leading candidates.
So Cruz threw his hat in the ring? I don't know. I
believe that was one of the ones listed.
Ted Cruz.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I think it was 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah. And I hear the Democrats are looking for a replacement for Uncle Joe. I think they want to put him out to pasture.
Well, that most likely will be Gruesome Newsom unless Michelle Obama gets in. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen here. And there's also Christopher Wray, the FBI director, testified before Congress. Oh my God, what a laughing stock that was. I did not get to watch the whole thing, but I read some of the snippets. These things always happen when I'm not at home. So, you're either running to a doctor visit or you're taking your mom to the doctor visit or something else is going on and you never know. And I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off lately. So it's amazing I'm able to get anything done. But I got to tell you that Dan Perkins, which is a friend of the show, a longtime friend of the show, has his own podcast now that he put together. He does a black and white newscast with Vicki Tompkins, who's guest co-hosting when you were away. She was one of the people. Lucretia Hughes was the other. Mm-hmm. And they do a show that's called Moms Across America. Now, I wasn't blessed to be a mom, but you can say I'm the mother of my local Tea Party movement. I'm the mother of this movement here on Southern Sense. So in a way, yeah, you could consider. I'm a mom to 7 cats. I play mother with my fiance. So, I could be a grandmother or a great-grandmother at this point.
You gave birth to this show.
Yes, I did.
You gave birth to the show, yeah.
So we've done actually now 2 episodes. And people can Google Moms Across America. I don't have the link. I should add that link to my show page. And we've done 2 episodes so far. And it's a lot of fun. It's only half an hour. And we hit various topics. And it's really interesting. And everything's completely off the cuff. We get thrown a subject and we just run with it. Basically the same thing we do here on this show. Mm-hmm. So looks like, I want to make sure I did, or did I just, I think I may have sent this text to the wrong phone number. See that?
Well, is she in the same time zone we are?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
That could be an issue.
Yeah, that could be an issue. Let me try this again because you know me. I'm notorious for reversing numbers. I do that to you all the time. Right? And that's part of being dyslexic. Let me just make sure I got this correct. All right, let's try this one more time and send this out because this looks like the correct number. Okay. Oh, man. But while we're waiting for her to call in, there have been several people across the nation that have been making their voices heard. And you're finding that a lot of people are leaving the Democratic Party. There's another person that recently left, a representative in Georgia, has decided that because her state, and she's been trying to push for school choice, more parental rights. She's pushing for a lot of good, solid programs that we also support as conservatives, as Republicans. And she's being shot down. How dare you decide that you as a parent know better what's for your child than the government does? And she finally said, enough. She says, I'm being ostracized because I am pushing these ideals, because I do believe in the parents having a right on where their child should go to school. I do believe they have the right to decide how that child is raised. I do believe in more affordable housing, but responsibly. She's pushing for a lot of good, solid programs that we've all stood behind. And because of that, instead of finding the compromise across the aisle or saying, hey, wait a minute, this is a good idea, maybe this is a good election point, because we're telling parents that, hey, listen, let the school dollars follow the kid rather than the kid follow the dollars. You're still collecting the taxes, it's still going to the government coffers. You get their vote. But no. So they're leaving the Democratic Party. And congratulations, and welcome to the side of reality.
Well, you know, it's interesting that with these indictments against Trump, his numbers went up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's leading DeSantis, 20-something points.
Yeah.
I tell you.
And everyone kept on saying that, oh, well, he's being indicted again. He's not going to make it. He should drop out. The more they say that, the higher his numbers go and the more money piles into Donald Trump's campaign. And as Duck points out in the chat room, he will be speaking at the Turning Point Action Conference on day one. Duck, remind me where that is located. I forget where that is. He will be having a rally in Kentucky. I believe the name of the town is called Morningside. On, I believe it's September 9th. I can tell you actually in a few seconds where it is because I got invited by our friend Lucretia Hughes. Let me go back to this and go back to her text to me the other day. Here she is. Matter of fact, Lucretia, yeah, it is September 7th. It's called Freedom Fest. And let me just blow this up here. Can I blow up? It is in Morning View, Kentucky. And that will be on September 9th.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, confirmed speakers, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kimberly Guilfoyle, of course, a couple of congressmen, Dinesh D'Souza, James O'Keefe, and you go down the list to one of the speakers is our friend Lucretia Hughes, and she'll have a booth over there too. So this rally is going to be between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. with food and drinks and giant fireworks. So this should be interesting. So I'm trying to figure out whether or not I can make it over to Kentucky on September 9th. I don't know, but it should be interesting. And I'm honored that she asked me to help her run her booth. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
Great things are happening.
As you know, I had the opportunity to attend that Road to Majority event in D.C. about 2 weeks ago. And I got to hear all the major conservative candidates like Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, and I was there when he got booed. I mean, he started coming down with the hammer on Trump, and he just got booed out of the place. Was very defensive about it too. And then
was it Lindsey Graham? You said
Chris Christie.
Oh, Chris Christie,
New Jersey.
Oh yeah, I don't blame them.
Yeah, he got booed. And I did see. I saw your favorite politician there, Lindsey Graham, and Mike Huckabee was there. He got some kind of lifetime achievement award, but of course the person they all wanted to see and hear was Trump, and he was the last speaker that Saturday night, and I mean, he was awesome. You know, the place was electrified, and it happened at the same hotel, the Washington Hilton, that Reagan got shot at back in 1980. You know,
wow.
Really, really ironic.
Yes. Yeah, highly ironic. But normally I have myself a bunch of fillers to fill in when someone doesn't call in, and I have to apologize. You know, it's been crazy. I mean, yesterday alone, I started off the day with taking my mom to her doctor visit. My fiance had to go for a scan for his surgery on the 1st, and then I had to go running next county over to go to my cardiologist. By the time I got back, it was 6 o'clock at night. So I'm a little behind the wave here. But
wow.
Yeah, things have been a little hectic lately. But I do wish that our friend Jackie had called in. We've got like about 15 minutes left.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask you, what you think? What you think if Trump was in office right now and they found cocaine in the White House?
Oh my goodness!
What would you think the media be calling for?
Thank you for bringing that up. That is so strange. I've been following that, and Dan Bongino, who was Secret Service under Clinton, was it Clinton or the Obama? Obama. He said, "Listen, I know that corridor very well. You know, you have to have a special pass to get in, and don't tell me that there aren't cameras there. Don't tell me that you can't get fingerprints off of a baggie. Plastic is one of the things that you can leave the best set of fingerprints ever. Tell me this person didn't touch any surface. Tell me you don't have a time frame of when that baggie is found. And this cubby, that's where you put your cell phone in when you walk into the White House. So they know whose cubby that's assigned to. Don't tell me you don't. Well, Secret Service may not be able to run the prints. They go over to DOJ, to FBI, and ask them to run the prints. But, hey, if we can't trust Christopher Wray and the FBI to be nonpartisan, January 6th, hint, hint, how do we expect them to punch their way over a paper bag pulling prints off of a baggie containing coke? And as you said, if this was President Trump, but wait a minute, they did go after Trump for coke. He did have coke in the White House. Do you know what he had? Diet Coke. And there's a notorious picture of him riding in a golf cart, slugging down a Diet Coke. So, you know,
and that made the news.
Is the president endorsing coke now?
Well, as far as I know, the case is closed on the cocaine. They have no interest in pursuing it. No interest. And when Christopher Wray was asked how many people attended the January 6th rally, he couldn't answer. Well, hell, the news spread it across the front page. How many people were at the plaza? How many people marched towards the Capitol? How many people were at the outside plaza of the Capitol? The news had the numbers. Tell me the FBI didn't know how many people were there. How many people actually attended the rally? That's BS. That's complete and utter BS. Can you tell me how many people are still under investigation for January 6th? Oh, he couldn't tell that. Oh, yes, he knows. How many people were illegally tapped? Oh, he knows. What were they coming up with? The number, I forget what the number was, but how many per day were being illegally tapped on a fake warrant? They know the numbers. Thousands.
They know the numbers. But he's not going to say because it's embarrassing. It's going to prove that, yes, they are partisan.
And see, what I don't get is why, well, I do know why, but put it this way, it would be nice if the GOP leadership in Congress would call a news conference and point out the fact that the former president did offer to provide Nancy Pelosi with, National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol, and she turned it down. And some other things he offered to augment the Secret Service and Capitol Police, and once again, she turned it down. The leadership doesn't speak up, and it just ticks me off. And a lot of other conservatives that they just let this stuff go. They don't say nothing. You got to get the truth out there. Somebody's going to hear it sooner or later.
Yeah. Someone is going to hear it. And, we've got so many scandals going on with this administration.
And you don't hear about it.
Folks, we got another year and a half with this guy still in office. And it ain't over yet. It ain't over yet. And every time he appears in public, it gets worse and worse and worse. This man, you can see, not year by year he degenerates, not month by month, but you see it week by week. And they still trot him out in public to globetrot. And the rest of these world leaders are looking at this doddering old fool, wondering, this is the mighty United States of America? These are people that we held in respect and deferred to. This is a nation that was premier in self-defense as well as defending the innocent or the defenseless. This is a nation that was the leader, the world leader in human rights, in justice, in freedoms. And we find ourselves censored. We find ourselves being held illegally against the Constitution. January 6th prisoners sitting there. This is more than 2 years. For some 3, being held. No, this is not right. This is not right. Going on 3 years for some of them. We have American citizens being held in the Russian gulags. I'm going to mispronounce his last name, but he's a musician. He went over there, formed a band in Moscow, and was performing. He has been in prison. He's an American citizen. Oh, God. I can see his last name, but I can't pronounce it, and I apologize. I do not mean him disrespect. Newsmax was carrying his story yesterday. Greta Van Susteren, William, Gojib, I believe the last name, for 7 years. For 7 years. He was arrested in November of 2016, going on 7 solid years. And the Biden administration, when they're contacted by his family, don't know his name. But the New York Times reporter, they can regurgitate that on cocaine heartbeat. He's been in there held, 3 months? And you've got an American citizen held in a gulag and hard labor, his health failing for 7 years, and you don't know his name? This is disgraceful.
Well,
this is disgraceful.
All of our enemies and competitors see us as being weak. And, of course, this hasn't gone unnoticed by our major, adversaries like North Korea and China. And that's why I believe within the next couple of months to probably between that point and next year, sometime before the election, China's going to invade Taiwan. They already are sending ships over there in that area into the waters that Taiwan claim as theirs. They are challenging our forces. In other words, they're not even afraid of the mighty United States military anymore. They just don't have that respect. But
no, they don't.
I think if you get the right person back in office, I think a whole lot of things are going to change. And a lot of people that's laughing at us now, they're going to fear us.
Yeah. We are no longer a nation to be feared, no longer a nation to be respected.
Nope.
And how are we going to present ourselves if we cannot get that Democrat Biden out of the White House? And what's the alternative? The cackling hyena, Queen Camilla Mella?
They don't want her. she
doesn't even know what planet she's on.
Yeah, she makes as many gaps as he does. You have to wonder about her. But they'll find somebody that, like I said, they want Newsom to step up to the plate. And I guess if Jerry Brown was still young enough, is he even still alive, the former governor of California, they probably would call on him. Hey, Jerry, do this for your country.
It is going to be interesting, but it's a good thing that Chris Christie was booed off the stage.
Big time.
Someone had said that they were at, it was a rally here in Pickens, South Carolina, that Lindsey Graham got up on the stage, and God bless the state of South Carolina, they booed him off the stage. I'm sorry.
I heard
Lindsey
about
Graham is a staunch supporter of President Trump. Why? Because he's going to ride his coattails in for another re-election. Lindsey Graham does not have a good reputation here in the South Carolina. However, the only reason why he continually gets elected is we have open primaries, which means you can vote in any primary. And there's no registration by party in the state of South Carolina. We're trying to change that. We've had a referendum. We've had a referendum that passed recently, asking, would you support placing your political affiliation on your voter registration? That passed. that resolution. All it said, would you support, putting this on your voter registration? Now we need to change our state constitution to allow these things to occur. Once we allow registration by party, we can then change the Constitution to allow a closed primary. And it's still an uphill battle. We've been battling this, oh, God, Lord, for more than 15 years that I am aware of. I'm sure it's even a lot longer than that. But once we can close the primaries, we can then have a solid Republican and a solid Democrat run.
So it's not as simple as
working.
It's not as simple as getting a whole bunch of signatures to get it on the ballot and then the state votes on it?
No, we have to change the state constitution. That is the only way it will be done. And
so you
that
have
is
to
where
pressure
we
your
have the uphill battle.
politicians.
To place a referendum on the ballot to amend the Constitution.
I see. Okay. Because, down here in Florida, probably everywhere else, they have this medicinal marijuana. Now they're taking the next step, recreational. They want to put that on the ballot. See, and that's the thing about the Democrats. They do things incrementally. And that's why we should never even let them get their toe in the door. Because they're not satisfied with just one phase. They got maybe phase 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be on an airplane where somebody's smoking, marijuana or something that's got to fly the plane, or the I start to say trailway, Greyhound bus. There's no more trailways. But that's going back a few years.
Well, I will tell you that at one point during one of my Tea Party meetings, my state senator, highly conservative, but he's mostly more independent, libertarian than a conservative. And I would say 99% of the time I back him. And this one time he came into the Tea Party meeting and he said, listen, I was thinking about placing, up for legislation, medicinal marijuana. And he explained how he was sculpting the legislation. It would be highly narrow, and it would be only for medicinal purposes. Any THC, which is the psychotropic element of marijuana, would be removed. It would no THC in it whatsoever, and it's only for specific medical conditions, which was limited to a small segment of our society. But it would allow them to get the treatment that they would need. What it would do is treat seizures, especially in children. And one girl was having as many 65 seizures a day. Her mother was able to take her to Colorado, get the medication she needed, and it reduced the seizures to 8 a day. Didn't eliminate them, but it made the girl's life a lot easier to live. And said, if it's narrow as that, and it would prohibit any introduction of legislation to legalize marijuana in any other form, no, we wouldn't support that. But if it's for specific medical conditions, on the knowledge, no THC, and no open doors to pot shops, we would agree. So he crafted the legislation, he put it forward, it got shot down. The Democrats then began to amend it, to the point where it opens the door for pot shops. Pot shops. Not pot shots, pot shops. No, I'm not smoking the wacky weed, guys. But, you go down here, you get these things where you see CBC. Again, that opens the door. Because CBC, if you're not careful and monitor it properly, will end up having the psychotropic in it. And if you don't pay attention and police them, we're finding that a lot of them are selling pot out the back door. So, they're going to find one way to go around you, but we have to be vigilant. And as you said, once we open that door, it cracks wide open. But it works both ways.
Recreational, on the way.
But we can work the same tactics the other way, as in the state of South Carolina. Crack the door open, put your voter affiliation on your voter registration cracks the door open, leading to us being able to eventually pass that constitutional amendment to close our primaries. So it can work for the good and it can work for the bad. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we have to watch what bathwater you're bathing the baby in.
That's true. That's so true. And
it's time for you to call our next guest in.
All righty, I can do that. We can get started early. We got to talking. I forgot all about it.
And with that, while you do that call, I will give you John Kuhn and American Heart. And we will be back shortly. And let's get John Kuhn coming here.
I'm American made. I got American parts. I got American faith in America's heart. They say our reputation needs a new coat of paint and a delicate melody. But I say I like to bruise it, 'cause a melody don't mean a thing if we don't have the strength to sing. And I won't be made to ever feel ashamed that I'm American made. I got American parts. I got American faith in America's heart. Go on, raise the flag. I got stars in my eyes. I'm in love with her, and I won't apologize. They say that we need changes, as if all the founding fathers seem to get it wrong. Oh, but I say that I still believe in the greatest innovator, liberator, cultivator, freedom knows. So I suggest
Okay, and we're back. All right, Curtis, looks like we're having problems with our guest today.
Oh, yeah. I left a message for her to call in, so hopefully she'll pick up that message and give us a call. Tune in. Yeah.
I hope so. I'm now texting the people responsible for her and letting them know that, hey, we need her to call in because she's extremely interesting and her book is fascinating in dealing with what's going on with the transgenderism, what do you call it, grooming of our children. And at one point I was reading a section of it and I was actually crying. It is heartbreaking. And I had what do you want to call it? I guess a kick in the gut. A family member had texted me, and he's getting married. He was a lovely lady. But he was worried about how I would attend the wedding with his groom being a transgender. It's like, this is an adult. Why would I give that person any less respect and dignity? It's a decision they made. That's a decision they live with. I will treat them politely and address them as they choose. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
Wow. This is a weird world. I'm telling you. And see, one thing the left learned a long time ago, decades ago, to advance their agenda, they need to get at people when they're young. And I'm talking about our children. I mean, as young as 6 years old, to program them and propagandize them. And that's what they've been doing for the last 60 years. And that is why we have a majority of our kids under 18 years old who have fallen for this New World Order and this agenda with the environment. And that's one of the main things they did. They used the environment as a means to work their agenda into the minds of our children, Well, we got to save the planet, and those who don't want to do that are the enemies. And, of course, that's us, right-wingers.
People demand tolerance, but they fail to give it. And that's the difference here. He's upset because I wouldn't be tolerant of his friend. Yes, I would be tolerant. I'd be respectful and loving, as I would be to anyone.
He thought you wouldn't
be. This is
be.
an adult to an adult.
He assumed you wouldn't be.
What I don't like is when you try to impose that behavior on my life, where you demand that, I tote your flag. I pledge allegiance to your flag. No, I'm not going to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and I kneel at the cross of God. So, no, be tolerant of me, but don't push me to the point where you're going to evoke a reaction that you're not going to like. I'm not going to do that to you, so don't do that to me. And then I knew that a family member was having some difficulty with their identity, and it was something that, was not openly discussed really, but we were aware of it. And it turns out this individual has gone through the transitioning. Fine. This individual made their choice in their 20s. They're heading into their 30s. It's a decision they made. I will respect that. It doesn't mean I stop loving that family member. And why would you think I do that? What type of a heartless person do you think I am? But that's how they look at us. Hey, listen.
Yeah, that's true. We're heartless. We're bigots.
Yeah. But we're trying to find out what's going on with our guests here. So So I'm texting to the agents. Anyway, 2 p.m. Eastern time is how it's booked on the thing. And it is confirmed, but there's a problem. But we'll find out. Maybe we can get them both booked into next week. Anyway, there's one thing when you do this to a child that cannot make an informed decision. When you try to teach a child that cannot understand or comprehend the idea of sex or gender at an age where, they will call their parts, their personal body parts, cute little funny names. It's your pee-pee, it's your woo-woo. But no, they want you to use the anatomically correct term to a child that may be 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. No, they don't understand that. They don't understand the concept of male and female yet. They're just starting to grow into their body and learning about the world around them. It's so much that they're absorbing, but they're absorbing it on a mental level of a child. And they expect these little children to behave as adults. And
yeah, that's true.
They can't.
No, they can't. Never will. Well, the Supreme Court came out saying that Biden's forgiveness of student loan debt was unconstitutional. He didn't have that power.
So what does he do? He does the same exact thing again.
Yeah, executive order. So I'm like, well, how is it that they could just circumvent the rulings of the United States Supreme Court with a presidential, executive order? I don't get it. I mean, does that make it even any more legal or what?
The Supreme Court ruled that the power of the purse lies in the Congress and the House of Legislators.
But King Joe decides he's going to do it anyway. As far as, any loan that's related to the federal government, he's going to forgive their loan. Now, what about the financial institutions that gave those loans? Who's going to compensate them? Or are they just out of the money? You can't run a country like that no more than you can run a business like that, zero-sum return. You give out something, but you get nothing back for it because the government going to step in and say, hey, you don't have to pay this back. So nobody's going to go into a business like that. And guess what? Then we'll have the government running everything when it comes to student loans. And I think that's what they want. They break down systems by doing just what they're doing,
Well,
so the government can come in later.
Well, they're trying to do a partnership with banks to do these loans. And if the government were to turn around and do the loans themselves, again, the power of the purse comes from the legislature. Now, all they have to do is say, we're not going to fund this, period. And all the legislature has to do to them and say, hey, listen, you got X amount of dollars to your department for you to spend for these programs. Not a penny more. We will not fund you for giving these loans. That's $800 billion. Where are we going to get that money?
And we control the House. There's no reason why this should even go through. Our leaders have got to step up to the plate and be leaders and stop abdicating everything, They got to, or we're not going to survive. But I'll see how this plays out. King Joe. Speaking of kings, didn't he recently visit King Charles?
Yeah.
Did he have any embarrassing moments then? I'm sure he has some embarrassing moments.
He was a stumbling fool again. It's become so painful I can no longer watch it. I just can't. When he steps onto the foreign stage and they put the cameras in front of him,
I can't watch it.
It's like a train wreck. It is a train wreck happening. All right. Sorry. Trump may be bombastic when he speaks, but he doesn't make a fool of himself.
No.
Unless you're Morning Joe, and Morning Joe will find anything to mock Trump with. As if anyone watches Morning Joe anymore. I think I got more viewers than he does. And that's pretty damn bad.
And Trump has a personality that's electrifying. Okay, that looks like our guest.
Yes, it does. And as we've gone back and forth. Well, let's welcome to the show Dr. Miriam Grossman. Good afternoon, Dr. Grossman. How are you today?
Oh, I am so sorry to be late. I really apologize.
Well, we're just simply going to have to rebook you because I got up to chapter 11, and there's some points in your book where I was crying. And when you were speaking to the parents, that just really tore my heart apart. Because that's the one thing that people forget. It's the family around the individual that is transing that hurt them a lot, the most, because they don't know
Annie,
what to do or how to handle it.
Annie, I'm so glad that you've read so much of my book. I just want to, let me just tell you what happened. I am actually narrating the book for the audio, and I went over time. I knew that I had you at 2 o'clock, and I'm so sorry. I was narrating, and I was really into what I was reading. And can we rebook right now?
Oh, we can rebook if you want to come back next Friday, same time.
Okay, let me just see here.
People, this is Radio Live.
You mean we're on the air right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Okay, well that's fun. Okay, so
yes.
We're looking at the 21st at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, we can do this, but we can give it a little heads up now, a little teaser to make people tune in next week too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's see, a little tease. Well,
all right. Well,
listen.
your book is
Lost
in Trans Nation.
Yeah, Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. I am, as a child psychiatrist who's been seeing these families now for a few years, I'm warning parents. I want them to know what to do about this issue before it arrives at their home, before their sons, send them a text saying, I'm not your son, I'm your daughter, and I want to take blockers and estrogen. Okay, when this happens, it's a catastrophe. We don't want this to happen. We want to prevent it if at all possible. So I'm educating parents so they understand where these radical, nutty ideas come from, the idea of being born in the wrong body, totally without any medical foundation whatsoever. Families have to understand this. They have to know what's going on in the schools. They have to understand why their pediatrician is possibly not to be trusted. You have to vet your pediatrician. Otherwise, when you bring in your kid and the pediatrician asks you to leave the room, she or he may be saying to your kid, 8 years old, 7 years old, do you identify as a girl or a boy? So, parents have to be vigilant, and they have to know who their kids are talking to online. They have to know what's going on at school. I have a whole section of the book dedicated to how parents can get control of their kids' internet use and their social media use, because this is where the ideas spread. It's a social contagion. Kids are hearing about this online. It's very cool now to be transgender or to be neither male nor female, but it puts a child on an assembly line toward dangerous medical interventions. I've seen too much.
Well,
I've seen too much.
When I first learned of this transgenderism with kids, I was just starting my show, now going on, oh, good Lord, 13 years ago. And I said, growing up in the age I grew up with, I watched the fads, and packs of girl cliques, have this tendency when one does it, the rest of the pack start to do the same thing. It was bulimia, it was anorexia, and then coming into the late 80s, 90s, it was female pregnancy, teenage pregnancy. And there were all these different fads. And when I was watching this progression of transgenderism, I noticed that it's centered mostly around female cliques, which you address in the book. And there are girls that just are dying to be part of the cliques. Now, I never was one. I had my little small circle of friends, but I wasn't one of the in people, the clique. And, sometimes you wish you could be. And as a kid growing up, you want to belong. You want to feel like you're accepted and you're loved and people appreciate you for who you are. But what better way is to do something everyone else in the clique does? Is this what you're finding?
Yeah, you're bringing up a very valid point. And we know that entire groups of friends, sometimes from the same class at school, are showing up at clinics wanting hormones. So this is very much a social contagion, and it's the kids, not only the girls. I mean, they are a majority of girls, but there are plenty of boys, trust me, who are also involved with this. And these are kids in general who, like you said, they want to feel like they belong. They may have trouble making friends, fitting in. If they're on the autistic spectrum, which many of these kids are, they're awkward socially. They don't fit in. They have black and white thinking, meaning that, let's say there's a girl who is on the autistic spectrum. She's never really fit in with the other girls. She's more interested in stereotypically boy subjects, STEM subjects, maybe sports, or what have you. And then adolescence hits. All the girls are into makeup and clothes and boys. And this girl feels very awkward about her changing body. She's scared about getting her period. So she thinks in her black and white thinking, and this is what she hears online as well, if you don't like your body, your girl's body, you may be a boy. So this is a very, very dangerous situation that we have. And then these kids, if you take them to a gender clinic, they will immediately be put in the driver's seat. And the parents will be told that if you don't get with this program, you may cause your child suicide. So we were really, I can't emphasize how serious this issue is and how much parents need to be educated before it hits their families. The book is also for parents that are currently going through the disaster, but even more so, it's for parents who want to avoid that disaster.
Well,
so it's lost
the book
in Transnation. Sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say the Lost in Transnation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. And what I loved about your book is you follow the history. How did we get to this point? Where did it start? And where everything fell through the crack? And then who formulated what you call the arts of faithfulness? And what happens to people that don't adhere to it, someone like you? The cancel culture, the silencing, the shaming of things that go on. And we see this now so prevalent in our society where if you don't accept the new norm, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're a bigot, you're this, you're that. I just had a member of my family do this to me just a few minutes before coming on air, believe it or not. And someone very near and dear to me. And I knew there was a problem when I was called a cisgender, and I had to look up what the word was by this individual. I said, and it was a brand new word. It was just something that no one even heard before. I'm like, what the heck is this? And, he's going back and forth with texts on me. Now, he is now an adult, and the individual that he is supporting also is an adult. And I said, listen, it's not going to stop my love for you. It's not going to stop me from caring for you and respecting you and helping you however I can. But we're finding that they're demanding tolerance but failing to give tolerance.
Well, what they're demanding is that we reject reality in the same way that they have, you see. And they're compelling our speech, trying to compel our speech, which I will not agree to. But you see, what I want your audience to understand, the parents in your audience, is that you see the medical profession is not immune to that cancel culture and to that squashing of any dissenting opinion. To the contrary, there is major silencing of dissent in my profession, in the medical profession, but parents never hear about it. Now, I'll point out to you something very exciting that just happened yesterday. Okay, the Wall Street Journal published an opinion piece written by 21 doctors from other countries outside the U.S., basically saying to our medical establishment here in the U.S., what the heck are you doing? There is no evidence for benefit of these medical interventions in youth. What are you doing? And these 21 clinicians and researchers came from, I think, 9 different countries. And they call out by name the president of the Endocrine Society, who has claimed that the hormone treatments, that there's overwhelming evidence that the hormone treatments are beneficial. So this is really huge. And there is a fierce debate that's going on that parents never hear about. If you go to your pediatrician, if you go to that gender clinic, they're not going to tell you, oh, by the way, what we're doing here is actually pretty controversial. What we're doing here is not done in 7 European, Scandinavian countries. They don't do this.
Well, Dr. Grossman, I got to tell you, you're going to be speaking to me again on Wednesday with Vicki Tompkins on Moms Across America. I do that show also with her. I just started this. This will be my 3rd time with her. So I've already got the heads up on her.
Oh, okay, great. But Annie,
I'm going to have you come back.
Yeah,
sure.
Could I ask you a question? I know this is live, but you seem to think it's okay to do this scheduling stuff. So I had you in for 2 o'clock next Friday, but I see that I have something else at that time. Could it be 2:30?
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
Okay, perfect. So
and we can actually
next week.
give you a whole hour, because half an hour or even 15 minutes does not cover this subject the way you cover it.
All right, let's go for it. I'm putting you in for an hour. 2:30 to 3:30.
This is a teaser, folks, and there's a link to her book that is going to be released in 2 more days. Is your book being released in 2 more days?
On Tuesday, so I guess, 3 or 4 days, something like that.
4 days. 4 days. 4 days. There's a link to it to Amazon where they can sign up and get it to them by then.
I want to also tell your listeners to please follow me on Twitter, if they're on Twitter, which is Miriam_Grossman. And I have a website, which is miriamgrossmanmd.com.
All right, fantastic. And we'll see you 2:30 1 week from today.
Thanks, Annie. And again, I apologize for being late.
No problem. And God bless for the hard work you do, ma'am.
Bless you, Annie. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, that is settled. That's always fun to do, Curtis. We got your friend here and our friend to the show, former Ambassador Stanley Escudero. Good afternoon, Stanley. How are you today?
I'm just fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. We started off with a rocky bit to the start of the show, but we got it going. Man, I don't even know where to start with you because there's so many crazy things going on out there. And you have your specialty in some of these areas. I think the last time we spoke to you was about the fall of Afghanistan. Thank you, Joe Biden, on that one. But there's a lot of ramifications coming out of there, and President Biden seems to be off in la-la land. He said something to the effect that the Taliban is helping the U.S. fight Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda. I'm sorry, they're what?
I'm sorry, that what is helping us fight Al-Qaeda?
The Taliban. And
the
actual quote I have here is, remember what I said about Afghanistan? I said Al-Qaeda would not be there. I said it wouldn't be there. I said we would get help from the Taliban. And he said this past Friday. So what's happening now? What's going on? Read your press. I was right. Will someone please wake up creepy Uncle Joe?
Well, you do have to understand when listening to Joe Biden that he is a corrupt, demented puppet of the far left. But that aside, he really doesn't know very much about Afghanistan. It is true that there are some elements of the Taliban who are opposed to some elements of Al-Qaeda. But it is also true that the leader of Al-Qaeda, after the death of Osama bin Laden, a man named Ayman al-Zawahiri, an Egyptian doctor, actually, sought refuge in Afghanistan and was living there openly in a building until we tracked him down. And he used to stand every morning on his balcony and look out and that sort of thing. And we had a predator drone in the air over the building. And when he was standing on his balcony, we took him out with what is called a shredder, which is it's a kind of a missile that's mostly blades, and it doesn't make much of an explosion, but it does do pretty much fatal damage to a human being. Of course, the Taliban knew perfectly well that al-Zawahiri was there. He was paying them. Mm-hmm. So there are still other senior al-Qaeda officials in Afghanistan. In fact, the building that al-Zawahiri was living in is actually owned by the defense minister of the Taliban government. So what can I tell you? I mean, President Biden was wrong about that, as he is about so very many things.
But people don't realize that really they do now have the ability to launch attacks against the United States, which they are planning. But no one's talking about this.
Of course they are. Well, Al-Qaeda has never given up on the idea of attacking the United States if it can. And keep in mind that it isn't just in Afghanistan. There are elements of Al-Qaeda in a great number of countries, particularly in Africa. There are other radical Islamic elements, some of which cooperate with Al-Qaeda in other countries. Some of which are opposed to Al-Qaeda specifically for reasons of personal rivalry, but not for reasons of opposition to the United States. I mean, the entire concept of jihad, as currently practiced by radical Islamics, is common to Al-Qaeda, but also to Hezbollah, and to various of the groups that operate in Syria, to the Taliban, of course, to the degree that they can carry it out and get away with it.
You know, is it the naivety of this administration, or is it just simply putting the horse blinders on? Because my friend Sam Faddis puts out And magazine, and I love this guy, former CIA, and he wrote that the Taliban are also providing Al-Qaeda monthly welfare payments that are used to pay fighters through the Taliban's Ministry of Defense. And they now use the Al-Qaeda training manuals and receive instructions from Al-Qaeda, the Ministry of Defense, and that they have established training camps all across Afghanistan. So this is not the little easy pullout and new ally to the United States at all.
They were never going to be our allies. It would have been absurd of this administration or any administration to suggest that the Taliban in charge of Afghanistan would be anything other than enemies of the United States to the degree that they're capable of being enemies. That is, It's part of their fundamental philosophy, not to mention their desire for what they would regard as revenge on the United States for crushing their government in the first place, and then fighting them for a number of years until such time as we finally got tired of it, and Biden basically surrendered, and we left, and they came back to power. To the degree that they are able to do it, they will come after us again, or facilitate others in doing so. And it's no surprise, there shouldn't be any surprise to anyone, that the Taliban receives payments from Al-Qaeda.
Now, knowing the connection the Biden family has to China, as we're finding out more and more, is it any surprise that he gave up Afghanistan so easily?
I'm not sure that he did it because the Chinese wanted him to, but the Chinese certainly were among the primary foreign beneficiaries, in the sense that they moved in very quickly to take over the mining of lithium and certain other minerals which exist in profusion in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is also right there along what the Chinese call the Belt and Road Initiative, as they reached out to the other nations of Central Asia, the former Soviet Union there, and included them in their cooperative and development efforts. Also, as I understand it, the Chinese basically took over the Bagram Air Base, which is the largest base in that part of the world. And I do not know how much communication and other equipment we left behind. I understand the agency took out what they had there, but I don't know what else was left behind, given how much equipment was left overall in Afghanistan. But the Chinese operate that base now. So from their perspective, insofar as Afghanistan is concerned, their investment in the Biden family has paid off very nicely.
Well, friend of mine,
it's my view. It's my view that Biden and his family are, how should I put it, a majority-owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party.
Politely put, and I agree. But when you look at Afghanistan, the map, it's linked to China, it's linked to Tajikistan, it's linked to Turkmenistan, and you know those areas eventually be the new Muslim caliphate, with China being the puppeteer to the caliphate. That is a scary idea.
I think that's probably a bit much. A new caliphate is possible. It is certainly something that the Taliban would like to see. I don't expect to see Iran included in such a caliphate because the Iranians are Shia and the Taliban are Sunni, and the two of them would not cooperate in the same kind of caliphate. I mean, for reasons that go back 1,500 years. Those Uyghurs are sadly mistreated by the Chinese. So I don't see the rise of a caliphate with China being the puppeteer, but I would certainly see China as being a supporter in the way that they support other countries, that is to say, to their own advantage. In a number of these Islamic nations, which may or may not want to join together to the extent that they are a caliphate. I don't see, for example, the Kazakhs of Central Asia joining with the Afghans. I don't see the Tajiks joining with the Uzbeks. They have been at daggers drawn at various times in their history. In fact, there is even a proverb in Tajik, which translated into English would go that the anger of the Afghan is like the pity of the Uzbek. By which they mean, obviously, that, well, the Afghans are ferocious people, the Uzbeks are even worse. And the Uzbeks are indeed very warlike people. But what the Chinese do, what they have done elsewhere, and what they would do in in Afghanistan, or for that matter in Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan or wherever they can establish their Belt and Road operation, is basically to provide substantial loans to develop elements of the local infrastructure, or perhaps to mine certain valuable minerals or something like this. But at such time as the government that's borrowed the money is unable to pay back the loans, some of which will be wasted on corruption because most of those governments are pretty corrupt, then the Chinese get to take over the mine or the port or the air base or whatever it is that they have got that they use. This is one of the ways in which the Chinese have acquired, for example, control of the ports on both ends of the Panama Canal. They also own a share of the Panama Canal these days. And
I bet Teddy Roosevelt's rolling around in his grave right now.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Now, you having been a former ambassador, can you ask me what could someone have done to lose their security clearance? The Iran envoy, Robert Malley, had his security clearance pulled, and he was put on leave. How serious could that be, and what possibly could he have given away?
I don't know. I have none of the details about that other than just what you mentioned. But you can lose your security clearance for any number of reasons, depending upon what it is you reveal, wittingly or unwittingly. He could very easily have discussed something with the media or with a representative of a foreign government or something, which was somehow overheard, in which he revealed something that he should not have. Whether he did it on purpose or not is another question. The fact that he was placed on leave suggests to me an element of willing participation, but that's entirely speculation on my part. It may not be true at all. I don't want to disparage the gentleman, unnecessarily. I simply want to say that one thing you could conclude, that you would have to conclude from that, is that he was at best careless with classified information, and not just ordinary classified information, but something quite sensitive. Information in the government is seriously overclassified. Things are regarded as confidential, which frankly are not. And I cannot imagine that in this case, the ambassador, if he had revealed something which is confidential, would have been chastised for it. They simply would have determined, as they often do with this kind of thing has happened in the past, that the information, while classified confidential, was really overclassified and shouldn't have been classified at all, in which case no action was necessary. But there are many levels of classification and compartmentalization which go above confidential to secret and above top secret and so forth. And to the degree that something like that was revealed, then that becomes very serious. And that could lead to the sort of things which have been visited upon the ambassador. But again, I'm engaging in sheer speculation.
Well, from what was reported, that he was one of the architects of the original Iran nuclear deal, but he was fired by Obama campaign after a series of meetings with Hamas. And he also continued to handle back-channel communications after being fired. He's also the son of Simon Malley, who was advisor to the PLO Yasser Arafat. So there's some curious connections there. So I think that there may be a little bit more, and I'm waiting to see what comes out in the future if
as I say, the fact that he was placed on leave suggests that there is something there, but I do not know what it is, and I have no information about it at all. I didn't even know everything that you just mentioned. But that certainly that kind of relationship, especially the familial relationship, would suggest to me that it might have been unwise to have him in that position in the first place. because
You think?
because the extended family and family relationships like that are far more important and far more telling in the Middle East and with families from that part of the world than they are, for example, with ours.
Well, here's something that's kind of like near and dear to me. All right, it deals with Cuba, and there is a reason why I say it's near and dear to me, because my late husband, his previous wife was Cuban American. My stepchildren were Cuban Americans, and my current fiance is also Cuban. So we have a possible building of a Cuban Missile Crisis involving Communist China wanting to build missile bases in Cuba. And there's a lot of speculation about what has already been put in place by China in Cuba. Shouldn't we be frightened about this? You're like 90 miles off of the coast of Florida.
Well, we certainly should be concerned about it. The fact is the Chinese have had a facility there for quite some years. And I presume that it has been doing some, to the degree that it was capable, some certain amount of spying on the United States. It has even been suggested, but I do not know if it's true, that some of the problems which our diplomats were having, physical problems, could have been the result of testing of various types of Chinese beam weaponry and that sort of thing. But I don't know if that's true or not. The one thing I can say is that the information we have is that the Chinese intend a very substantial expansion of their operation in Cuba to include listening and surveillance equipment, which would be far more effective than that which they have had there in the past. And this is of concern to me, not just because it's Cuba, and I haven't heard anything about a missile base, and I would be surprised if they were to try something like that. But it's of concern to me because the Chinese are being very, very active in the Western Hemisphere. In addition to the business in Panama, which I mentioned earlier, they're also very, very active in Venezuela and in Colombia. They are beginning to become more active in Argentina, and they have relationships with the post-Bolsonaro government in Brazil. And this degree of penetration of the Western Hemisphere, which is obviously a violation of the Monroe Doctrine, not that that matters to the Biden administration, but it is further evidence, if any is needed, of the Chinese drive to establish global dominance. And one of the ways in which they must do this is to create, if not threats, at least let's call them challenges to us in our own backyard. And that's what they are doing. Even philosophically, if you take a look at the writings of Mr. Trudeau, the current Prime Minister of Canada, and his father, you will see that both of them were devotees of Cuba and for that matter, of China, the great admirers of both. And this, too, is a matter, I think, which should be of concern to us, simply because the current administration in Canada is far more socialist-leaning than is even the current Washington regime, and that has potential for problems in the future. So, definitely. So, my concern about our hemisphere is that it is not today as safe, as secure as it once was, and I don't see the Biden regime being as concerned about that as they should be. No, not in the least bit, especially with the cut in federal dollars going to the military, and then the new socialization of drag queen shows at the Air Force Base, and I can go on and on and on, especially since I live in the heart of the Tri-Command here in South Carolina, heavy military influence in the Marines, and
not going over too well. I can tell you that completely. But people
Well, I should hope
ignore. Hoorah, Marines! But what we fail to see is the influence of China here, even within the United States. We see it with the control of Hollywood, the takeover of Disney, the corporate boardrooms that they have invaded, our colleges, the Confucius schools that they've been putting into elementary schools, the buying of massive amounts of real estate. Our latest thing has been buying up homes that they can turn around and own and then rent back to the Americans. That's the latest game. Buying up of farmlands, of food processing plants, and owning of ports and other various modes of transportation. They're basically trying to take over our system. What about the 5G thing that Trump kicked out, that they're trying to bring back in? I forget the name of that company, begins with an H. We ignore how much they have gotten the clause, and then we won't talk about how many politicians we now know that have been unwittingly in their pockets, to be polite. Some of them having dated one of the agents that sits in Congress right now.
Well, you're thinking of
we're ignoring. Yeah, I was being polite.
One thing you might have mentioned is that the Chinese have maintained a couple of Chinese police stations inside the United States, one in New York, whose ostensible purpose was to, in effect, spy on the activities of Chinese citizens who live here to make sure that they aren't doing things which would be regarded as objectionable by the Chinese government.
There was one in Texas and one in China. Yeah, one in Texas and one in Chinatown in Manhattan. I know the area very well because when we did the Columbus Day Parade, our NYPD contingent started at the edge of Chinatown. So
there has been a degree of Chinese penetration of our culture, of our political system, which is positively frightening. Because if you look at the way the Chinese are waging war on us, and that's exactly what they're doing, they are addressing every element of our system, that system which we have developed since the Second World War, and I speak now both internationally and internally. They're addressing every element of that system in an effort to weaken it, using our own rules and our own methods against us, and maximizing the use of money and, frankly, the tendency of our officials, like any government official, to be somewhat corrupt, to the point where it has become very difficult in this country to take any kind of really effective action which would diminish Chinese interests in any significant way. And their hope, I believe, is that over time they can sufficiently weaken us so that ultimately direct war with the United States, in the traditional military sense, would not be necessary, because the Chinese would come out as badly in such a conflict as we would, perhaps worse. I think they have the same plan in mind with Taiwan. I do not anticipate an invasion of Taiwan. That's 100 miles of open water they would have to cross with an invasion fleet. Not the easiest thing. But I certainly could see them weakening the United States, and perhaps also, to the degree that they can later be successful, expanding their control of the South China Sea and other areas to the point where it becomes more difficult for Taiwan to function. Taiwan also has a pro-China, that is pro-mainland China, party in their country. And over time, the Chinese can perhaps strengthen that one while weaken the rather more traditional Chinese association, so that in time, and the Chinese play the long game, in time, it simply falls into their hand without their ever having to invade it at all.
They can do it
least
simply.
that's their hope. I'm not sure they'll be able to pull that off either, because there are a number of traditional socialist dictatorial contradictions which exist within the Chinese economy, which is having potentially very serious harmful effects on that economy right now. And to the degree that they are not corrected, it will become harder for the Chinese to continue what they have been doing. But we shall see. In the meantime, we have to get a government back in the United States which has American interests foremost in its mind. That's certainly not the case with the present one.
Exactly. We need to get someone in that's strong to bring manufacturing back into the United States, priority being in our prescription medications, our medications of any type, or medical supplies. Bring them back, because they stranglehold us on that. And how many Americans will end up dying or having other dire consequences because they can't get the equipment or medication they so dearly need?
There are a whole host
with
of things
90%. Yeah.
Yes,
it's
a whole host of things we have to
that's
bring
the
back
start.
to the country. And it's going to require a significant economic shift, because, I mean, the obvious reason that things are today produced in China, but in many other countries as well, is because it's a lot cheaper to do so. So that the companies which want to maximize their profits do it by having things manufactured in China. One way to get around that without having to bring back the manufacturing to the United States immediately, directly in all cases, because that would substantially raise the cost of whatever it is that's produced, is to have it produced elsewhere in countries which are not well disposed toward China, like Vietnam or India, or other countries where production is still substantially cheaper than in the United States. And I do believe that's one of the things that some of the companies are reaching out to do. I know there are people who think that setting up a company in Vietnam, for example, is not a good idea. But with respect to China, I would point out that Vietnam and China are enemies. That after the end of the Vietnam War, China invaded Vietnam, and the Vietnamese kicked their butt. And they continue to have very serious disputes over territorial waters and islands and other things. So that working with the Vietnamese is working with a rival, of the regional rival of the Chinese at this point. To the degree that we can do that to our economic benefit, that's a good idea. But this is something that Mr. Trump started when he was in power, and I will at least give the Bidens some degree of credit in the sense that they have reached out to the Vietnamese, the Australians, the Japanese, the Philippines, and the Indians to talk about Indo-Pacific cooperation to offset what the Chinese have been doing. And while they haven't really, I should include the South Koreans in that as well, and while they haven't really achieved anything of note yet, at least they have started a process which could lead to something. Yes,
it could. And what people don't realize, Vietnam is probably the most capitalistic communist country possible, if that oxymoron can actually fit.
Yes, very true, very true. They have learned the value of a dollar. They certainly have.
Yes. While we're waiting for our next guest to call in, we have a few minutes left. And one thing that I thought was very curious that a friend of mine brought up, we saw the attempting revolt by the Wagner Group on Moscow. And
yes,
we saw the leader of the Wagner Group, I cannot pronounce his last name, I'm not even going to try to butcher it.
Prigozhin.
Thank you. Go to Belarus. And Belarus is a very close friend of Vladimir Putin's, which made it very curious why he would run there. And then next thing we know, he's over back into Moscow. So he raises a question, again, former CIA operative, whether or not this was a Trojan horse, whether or not this was going to allow Putin to open a second front using the Wagner Group through Belarus to then split the Ukrainian military might. Is that a possibility, or are we just hoping for something to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that was the reason behind this. Prigozhin and Lukashenko have known one another and been close friends for oh my God, 2 decades. Just as Prigozhin was originally very close to Putin, because believe it or not, there was a time when Prigozhin simply ran what amount to some hot dog stands, and they got to know one another because Putin bought hot dogs from his stand. But be that as it may, I think the issue that led to the mutiny was not related to Prigozhin and Putin so much as it was to Prigozhin and the regular Defense Department hierarchy. Putin and the Defense Department, the Defense Minister, a man named Shoigu, hate one another's guts. But Prigozhin and Shoigu hate one another's guts. This is in part because the Wagner Group, as trained and equipped and so forth by Prigozhin, had done better in combat than had the regular Russian forces. And Putin used Wagner to sort of offset the power and prestige of the regular Russian military, because after all, in any dictatorship, he's in a situation where he could be overthrown, and he's got to have power centers that he can use to balance one another off to make that less likely. What was happening was that the rivalry between the regular Russian military, Shoigu in particular, and Prigozhin, had reached a kind of a boiling point because of the poor performance of the Russian military in Ukraine, and the fact that Prigozhin felt that his guys could have done a lot better had they been better supported by the regular Russian military. And there were a number of officers in the regular Russian military who agreed with Prigozhin. I believe that Prigozhin felt that Shoigu was getting ready to act against him. He also felt that he had support from a number of military officers who would rally with him so that he could use his rebellion simply to get rid of Shoigu and a number of other senior officials, and perhaps become defense minister himself. Well, on the one hand, Putin couldn't permit he couldn't permit Prigozhin to become defense minister because that would unify these balancing elements. But by the same token, he couldn't permit the success of an apparent rebellion against him simply because his own military wasn't, and the National Guard was not challenging it effectively. They were just sending about 5,000 men toward Moscow, and they might actually have entered the city. They couldn't have held it, but they might have entered the city if they could have gotten across the river there that they had to cross, the Okna River. But what eventually happened was several of the senior officers, Gerasimov, who had been the commander of their general staff, and a man named Surovikin, and now another man named Peshkov. The latter two senior generals who were fighting commanders have been removed because they were well disposed toward Prigozhin. So there is a lot of exposure of people who were insufficiently supportive of Putin and what he is doing, but at the same time, within the defense ministry, not really supportive of Shoigu either. And you're seeing a lot of knife fighting, if you will, within the defense and military establishment. Prigozhin lost, and nobody is quite sure where he is. The Wagner Group has basically been either dismantled or absorbed into the Russian military, and it's not quite clear to me what's going to happen in the short term for Prigozhin. But I would not, if I were a life insurance company, I would not be issuing him any policies.
Well, then, if the Wagner Group does get absorbed, then there's no balance of power that Putin had before. So he loses either way then.
It's dangerous for him, yes, because that particular balance is gone now, and Shoigu is, at the moment at least, more powerful with respect to the defense establishment than he was. So that will make him more influential with Putin than he was. Now, my personal view is that what this will mean is that the Russian Defense Ministry establishment will push even harder for a stronger effort in Ukraine, because Shoigu and those who support him are very much tied to the Ukrainian war. And their careers and perhaps even their physical survival is dependent upon Russia eventually winning. To the degree that Putin is now more subject to the influence of these people than he was before Prigozhin was removed, that means that he is more likely, if he can, to reinforce the Russian effort in Ukraine. In the immediate future, of course, the Russians are trying, and being quite successful really, to defend themselves against the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which has taken only a small amount of territory up to this point. If they can blunt the counteroffensive so that it isn't very successful, then a couple of things will happen. There will be additional effort on the part of the West to push for a negotiated settlement. But a negotiated settlement would have to give Putin enough territory for him to be able to claim that he has won, which is something, of course, that Zelensky would oppose. But to the degree that they wait, if I'm right about what's happening with influence within Russia, to the degree that they wait through the winter, Putin will use that time to prepare for a renewed spring offensive, which would be larger. He would be recruiting and training more men. He would be changing tactics, possibly using more weapons of mass destruction like gas, for example, or carpet bombing of cities, things that from high altitude bombers, things that he hasn't done in the past. It's even possible that you would have the defense ministry arguing for the use in some cases of tactical nukes, although that would be only in absolute extremis, because that has a whole range of other sorts of potential problems. But I guess what I'm saying is that should the Ukrainian counteroffensive not deliver results which can force some degree of settlement, and should there be no negotiated settlement in the winter, I think we can expect the strongest kind of renewed offensive that Russia can mount next year, along about April or May.
But will Zelensky even allow that to happen? They are a very resilient
who would
people.
allow that to happen?
Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. He's been holding ground, and his people are very resilient.
Well, they
will
are,
not go quietly.
No, they absolutely will not. But in a war of attrition, they cannot win. There are simply not enough Ukrainians. Remember that at the beginning of the Second World War, the Nazis swarmed all over Russia. In the first few weeks of the war, they encircled and captured over 700,000 Russian prisoners. And yet, the Russian army clawed the guts out of the Wehrmacht at places like Stalingrad and Kursk and Leningrad and elsewhere, because there are just so many of them. The Germans were complaining at the end of the war that they were fighting whole divisions that they had never even heard of. If Ukraine it's a big if on Putin's part, but assuming that he can rally and recruit and send even more and more troops into the meat grinder, the Ukrainians are taking casualties too, in large numbers. Sooner or later, the Russian superiority in men and the number of equipment, the amount of equipment, even if it's older equipment, will wear them down, and there just won't be enough Ukrainian soldiers to continue the fight. It could take another year. It could take 2 years. But the longer the fight lasts, the worse are the chances of a Ukrainian victory.
Well, now there's also calls for them to join NATO. You also hear, I believe it was Sweden also being brought into NATO. Would that change the balance of power in the area?
Well, the balance of power in Northern Europe is already changing. Sweden is coming in. Finland's come in. All of Scandinavia is shifting more to a more overtly pro-Western, anti-Russian position in a formal sense. With regard to Ukraine, I hesitate to say that I agree with Mr. Biden on anything, but with regard to Ukraine, his position is the correct one, which is to say, in the future, yes, absolutely, as a result of a settlement, a negotiated settlement, Ukraine should indeed become a member of NATO. But right now, with the war continuing, no. And the reason that it must not happen now is because with the war continuing, if Ukraine were to become a member of NATO, then Article 5 of the NATO treaty would be triggered, and we would find ourselves automatically at war, all of NATO, with Russia, which is not something that we want or should want.
No,
a potential nuclear
III.
war with Russia over Ukraine is not in anyone's interest.
Ambassador.
Yes, yeah.
Hey,
yes,
this is CS. All right. I got a question for you.
Sure.
9/11 is coming up in less than 2 months. Now,
Yes.
in your role as U.S. ambassador, were there ever any time during your ambassadorship where you needed and requested extra security and failed to get it, like Ambassador Chris Stevens?
Well, let's see how to put that. With respect to extra security, I was the first U.S. ambassador to Tajikistan. I was there during the Tajik Civil War, and in October of 1992, the city of Baku collapsed into serious violence with tank battles in the streets and that sort of thing, and we requested that we be evacuated. So a C-141 was flown in from Germany, and we were able, with the cooperation, frankly, of the Russians, who provided us with armored transport to the airport and controlled the airport at the time, we were able to leave the country in our aircraft, and we were gone for several months before we could come back, before the war would make that possible. Let me see. When I was ambassador in Azerbaijan, we did launch an anti-terrorist operation which captured 3 of the 5 senior members of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which was part of Al-Qaeda. In fact, al-Zawahiri was the head of that outfit in those days. But we didn't need any extra security for that. I was the subject of some, let's say, untoward interest by very bad people at various times in my career, but I didn't request any extra security for any of that. It was dealt with in other ways.
Well,
I was just curious because it seems like Ambassador Chris Stevens put out several notices to Washington, D.C. and the White House that, hey, 9/11's coming up, and I think we need some extra security here. And I was just wondering how seriously Washington took security at our embassies.
Yeah, by the time 9/11 took place, I had already retired from the Foreign Service. So that did not affect, it could not have had any effect on me or my career because it hadn't happened yet. The evacuation in Tajikistan that I was talking about took place in 1992.
Yeah.
And the
Clintons
were not ambassador, were not president, and George H.W. Bush was still president.
Because I think Chris Stevens was murdered on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, if I remember correctly, because there was the attack on 9/11 first in Cairo, and then in Chris Stevens' compound.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And
under Obama.
It is true that Ambassador Stevens did request a variety of different kinds of security enhancements, which were denied. Had they been made available to him, I suspect that he would have survived, as would the others. But there you are.
It's just leadership again, a failure of leadership.
Now, you said you retired.
When did I retire? In November of 2000.
2000. All right.
It's a failure of leadership.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a follow-up question.
Of course, it was a failure of leadership. But what can I say? The leadership that we enjoyed in the United States under Obama and with Hillary as Secretary of State was severely deficient in a number of ways.
That, just to put it politely, put it rather politely. But you said in 2000. Had you any input into what happened in New York City on February 26th of 93 when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time? There were a lot of heads up, there's a lot of signals going on, and everyone ignored that.
No, I did not. I was not, I had no involvement in that at all.
I was just curious because I happened to have been on duty in Brooklyn when that happened, and the phone calls and everything coming into the precinct and people panicking. And it was a precursor. It was a test run for 9/11, and the nation didn't listen, which is such a shame. We can be so tone deaf at times.
No, at that time, let's see, what month was that again? That was...
The February 26th, it's 1993.
Yes, that's what I thought. At that time, I was in Washington, but I was in exile, if you will, from Tajikistan. We had left in October, and we were not able to get back in until March. So I was in Tajikistan. I was in Washington, and clamoring to go back, and basically in order to shut me up, the State Department made me the ambassadorial envoy for humanitarian assistance to Tajikistan, and they had me traveling around to various countries trying to organize, and actually succeeding in organizing, a lot of humanitarian aid, food aid mostly, and medical aid to Tajikistan to offset the impact of the civil war. But that's what I was doing at the time. I was not. I had no involvement at all in the events in New York.
Well, it was interesting because I remember when that report came out, which detailed, which I found so very ironic, detailed how the building could not be taken down from the bottom. It had to be taken down from the top up. And the report actually detailed how it could be done. And why did they just simply hand the blueprint to Osama bin Laden? Because that report, once it was made public, it was just very easy. Say, all right, fine, now we know how to do it. Let's take down, and 9/11 occurred.
I don't know what to tell you.
I said, we got a government that can be tone deaf.
It would have been an extremely successful terrorist operation, even had the buildings not collapsed. But of course, the fact that they did was, from Osama's point of view, gravy. Yeah, and it happened to be at a time that we had changed our tactics, and the fire department had joined with EMS, so it became one unit,
And we knew that they were going to pull everything up into the plaza at the World Trade Center. Very familiar with it, having gone down to One Police Plaza a lot. I knew the whole layout, and I sat there and I said, they're coming in from the top, the building's going to collapse, and you're going to have trucks and everything caught underneath. And you handed them a gift. You basically handed them a gift with that. But we've got the anniversary coming up, the 22nd anniversary coming up in just a couple of months, and let's hope we learn something.
Well, let's hope we are at least on the alert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ambassador.
Yes, sir.
You don't hear much about Islamic terrorism anymore. Are we winning that war? Or if not, who's the face of Islamic terrorism since we took out Osama?
Well, it depends on what part of it you're talking about. Certainly President Trump destroyed the caliphate. But there is still fighting going on from time to time in northern Syria. But it is on a much smaller scale, and our people are there to provide a degree of supervision and assistance, but we aren't really fighting it anymore. The main terrorist threat that I believe we face these days, that is Islamic, comes from Iran. That's in part because they provide assistance to Hezbollah and that sort of thing in Lebanon, but mostly because the Iranians are as busy as ever they can be developing nuclear weapons. I suspect they have reached the point where, with the production of fissile material, they could probably set off a nuclear explosion in a matter of weeks if they wanted to. And I say this because we have seen that they had reached the particles had been found indicating that they had reached about 83% purity, and the accepted level of fissile material these days is 90%, but 80% was the level of purity which we used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's just you don't get quite as big a bang for your buck. They could certainly set off a bomb if they wanted to, but I believe that what they are doing is creating enough fissile material at a sufficient level of purity to make several bombs, because I believe that when the time comes and they finally do set one off, and they will eventually, somewhere out in the Dasht-e-Kavir, their big central desert, they will then be able to claim that they have multiple nuclear weapons, and that they have ballistic delivery systems, and that they have figured out how to miniaturize those bombs to fit on the ballistic missiles, which could hit at least Europe, certainly Israel, and depending how well they have developed their missiles, possibly even the United States. They haven't reached that stage yet, but no one will challenge them at that point. When the first bomb goes off, they're not going to be subject to attack or any kind of very serious pressures, because they'll have the protection of the nuclear weapon, and that will put Israel at enormous risk. It will also create a massive nuclear arms race throughout the Middle East, because, once again, they are Shia. And the Saudis, the Turks, the Egyptians, the UAE are all Sunni. And all of them regard the Iranian to some degree as an enemy. And so, as quickly as ever they can, these countries will either develop their own nuclear weapons or buy them from someone else, like the Koreans or the Pakistanis. And you will have, in the most dangerous area of the world, a serious nuclear arms race. So I do think it would be wise for us and the Israelis to work together by whatever means necessary to prevent the Iranians from developing a nuclear weapon. The negotiations that the Obama administration entered into, and which the Biden regime is trying to follow up on will not prevent, and were not intended to prevent, Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. They were intended to delay that development until 2025, at which point they would be able to make such a weapon with the blessing, as it were, of the international community. The Iranians can wait that long if they want to. But that's how long we have, I think, to do something about it. And I don't see that happening.
Well, I wanted to ask you about my teeth are in backwards, Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, because he's been making a lot of courting moves towards Russia, and they've been close to begin with, but also he's been looking to get military equipment, specifically planes, from us. They used to be a very close ally, and with Hillary Clinton and Obama and now Biden, that relationship has been shot to heck. Should we be afraid of whatever Turkey may do next?
No, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be concerned about it. Erdogan is a very different kind of Turkish ruler. Ever since the end of the First World War, really, Turkey has been ruled, in fact, if not in name, by the Turkish military. And the Turkish military was conservative and not particularly pro-Islamic. It followed the traditions of Ataturk. Erdogan, however, when he took power, did so with a great deal of Islamic support, and he acted very effectively, really, to reduce the power of the Turkish military, which had become corrupt and not as effective as it had been. But and he made himself, as an individual, probably the most powerful Turkish leader, the most dictatorial Turkish leader since Ataturk. Having done this, though, with Turkey as a member of NATO, but at the same time a blood enemy of Greece for reasons related to events, again, around the end of the First World War and for a couple of years thereafter. He wanted to reach out and see what else he could find to reduce his dependency on the West, since he was far more Islamic than previous Turkish leaders had been. And the Russians were, while an historic enemy of Turkey, always interested in having better relations with Turkey because of the Russian desire to be able to pass through easily through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, the Turkish Straits, so they could get out of the Black Sea easily, particularly since Obama, in effect, invited the Russians back into Syria. The Russians had more military activity going on in the Middle East than they had after the 1973 war, and they had a greater interest in developing relations with Turkey so that they could move their warships and what have you back and forth more easily. So it was a situation in which the Turks could benefit from greater Russian support. What the United States needs to do is work things out with Turkey in such a way that we retain them in NATO and we retain a reasonable relationship with them. Ideally, we should try to move them back toward a more cooperative relationship with Israel, which they enjoyed until Erdogan began to shift toward the Islamics. He's begun to move away from that a little bit. That is, from the Islamic relationship a little bit in recent years. And to the degree that it looks like the Iranians will be able to become a nuclear power, this is going to disturb him quite a bit, and it may be possible to find ways that under the table cooperation can begin to be reestablished between Turkey and Israel. so that
Well, we hope.
so
we
that
do hope so. About that.
We can't simply walk away from Erdogan. Is what I'm saying. It's a very, very complex situation.
Yes, it is. But Ambassador, it has been a pleasure. You have been such a great sport sticking out with us for the extra half hour. I deeply appreciate that. And God bless you. And you know you're always welcome back on the show, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I'm always delighted to be on the show. And you know, what can I say? I hope there are people who listen.
They're out there listening.
Multitude of thousands.
Okay.
All right, Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
All right, see us.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye.
All right. We have now with us Hannah Davis from the Heritage Foundation. She is the researcher for immigration. Welcome back, Hannah. And how was your vacation?
Hey, thanks for having me. It was good. Much needed sun time.
Fun time, sun time. Man, what I'm trying to even figure out where to even start with you. You got a new, before you went on vacation, you put out a new segment on your toll, the border crisis in the States, and you singled out New York City. And during the 2 weeks you were gone, it just got nuttier and nuttier and nuttier. It's as if Mayor Adams now is no longer mayor of New York City, but the governor of New York. What the heck is going on up there?
Right. And yeah, you're right. Missing one day in immigration seems like 1 month. So missing 2 weeks, a lot has gone on. And I understand that different mayors have different amounts of power and clout depending on how powerful their city is or their state as a whole. And I understand that, you know, Adams is going to have a different representation and load than, say, a mayor in North Carolina or something like that. But he went on and he sued over 30 counties for not agreeing to his terms. I'm not even sure if that's completely legal. It's not politically sound, that's for sure, to make enemies of people who don't agree with your immigration policies. But it's absolutely insane. I mean, the people in New York, the annual cost, they're pushing $10 billion every year because of the government services that are benefiting well over 1 million illegal aliens, and it's all paid for by the taxpayers. You know, the medical costs, the school costs, things like that. I know that they're toying around between 20 and 30 schools are going to be used to house migrants. It's absolutely insane how they're putting their sovereign citizens last compared to the illegal aliens there. And it's not just them. I mean, it's cities like San Francisco or Chicago. We're seeing an increase in migration there, and we're seeing an increase in crime and an increase on the taxpayers' burden.
Yeah, I caught a glimpse of it as I was walking through a room. I think it was Newsmax. I had it up. A sample of the commercial from the mayor of San Francisco claiming that people weren't leaving because of the illegal aliens and the homeless camps. They were leaving because of climate change or some silly thing like that. It's like, no, come move here. Come move here. To San Francisco? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think they're leaving because of climate change either. You know, I saw my colleague, Simon, he actually wrote an article, it's pretty good, on talking about New York City and talking about how Mayor Adams just has everything backwards. You know, he used to be a cop himself, and he doesn't understand that if you make felonies...
I'll debate that. I'll debate that one. I got some inside knowledge. Inside knowledge.
You know, if you make a felony a misdemeanor, or you make a misdemeanor, you know, you decriminalize a misdemeanor, everybody's going to keep, you know, the recidivism rates are going to skyrocket. I know crime in New York City between 21 and 2022, like, surged over 22.4%. And it's because higher population comes with higher crime. But then also, if you start decriminalizing everything that people do in your city, whether it be San Fran or New York City, you're going to see that. And people are eventually going to flee. People aren't going to, you know, left-wingers or right-wingers, you know, it doesn't matter at that point. If they're not safe, if they don't feel comfortable in their environment, if their taxes are going up, they're going to leave. They're probably all going to go to Texas or Florida.
Yeah, well, you got your kids going to school. Now they got to walk through neighborhoods that's infected with homelessness and drugs and sex trafficking. And then you cross over the street, and then you have a hotel that's supposed to be prestigious, luxurious hotel that you think walking past the front door you're safe, but it's full of illegal immigrants. Again, people from the drug cartels, human trafficking, drug smugglers. Not all illegal immigrants are those, but a vast majority are. And how do you walk your kid to school? Once you get the kid to school, you find you can't send your kid to gym class because now it's a illegal alien camp.
Right.
Why would you want to even live in a city like that?
Right. And I think that's why people are fleeing. And also, it's not even politics aside. I mean, just think about the money. It's not financially down for New York City, who sees, billions of dollars in revenue just from tourism alone, to completely ruin their city. I mean, the winter time is, not too far around the corner. It's not going to be hot as much anymore. Fall's coming, and that's when they see a lot of tourism, and they're not going to see as much. And it's, I know Adams has said something about it, that he's worried about his tourism industry, and rightfully so. But he doesn't realize that the tourism industry is going to flounder because of the policies, the sanctuary city policies that he's enacted and that he's supporting, and that he's trying to sue surrounding counties in supporting as well. And it's just so funny that he sees an issue, but he doesn't ever see the reason why. And it's all tying back to mass illegal immigration and Biden's open borders. I know he's putting in these resource kiosks in the middle of stores. So he's decriminalizing, making felonies misdemeanors, and saying, well, if you steal, less than this amount of money, you're not going to go to jail. So people are going to keep repeating and doing that. And to combat that, instead of being a little bit more tough on crime, instead of getting rid of Soros-backed prosecutors, he's just putting in resource kiosks in the middle of stores so people can go to them and sign up for social services and the like. And I think he's just so out of tune with not only the average mind, but the criminal mind. And thinking that a criminal is going to walk into a store, he's going to steal things, and then say, "Oh, there's a resource kiosk here. I can change my ways." That's not how that's going to work. And so he's putting all this money and funneling it into these programs that aren't going to. It's not going to curb crime. It's not going to curb mass illegal immigration. He's only incentivizing it.
No, and plus, instead of using police on the street, they're going to use these robots. Excuse me. How does that deter crime? You see a robot, a drone or something coming down the street, you're an illegal alien or a criminal, and you don't care how you get your illegal firearm. It's easier because law-abiding people wouldn't break the law. Heaven forbid that these criminals would not break the law. What are you going to do? You're going to shoot the damn thing down. Or if you can turn around or you end up using your computer or smart device and hack into it. Hey, I'm sorry. Patrol unit number 2 is down. Oh, wait a minute, showing porn. Excuse me? Really?
Or they're gonna shoot these things down, and they're gonna strip them for their copper and their worth, and they're gonna go, buy things with them. Most
rare earth
crimes
elements that are the rare earth elements.
Yeah.
Hey, that's big bucks. That's big bucks in there. Come on. Yeah, it's no longer salvaging old discarded electronics for your skag, but no, now you've got rare earth elements, precious metals in there, and hey, components that if you keep them intact are very valuable. No,
right.
There's no.
It's wild. I think most people I hope assume and realize that the absence of crime is the telltale sign of good policing. It's not responding, it's mitigating and stopping things before they happen. And that's the absolute opposite than these sanctuary cities, that they operate completely backwards to any type of law enforcement training that you could get in a school or at an academy, any kind of thing like that. They do everything the complete opposite than what's the most logical.
I'm thinking back to my childhood. My girlfriend and I, here we are, 15, maybe 16, taking the Long Island Railroad into Manhattan, down to Times Square, and going into the ice skating rink and watching the tree lighting ceremony on Thanksgiving. And here our parents let us go alone. I can't even imagine a parent allowing a child to cross over into the New York City boundary, much less ride the train into Manhattan alone without parental supervision or armed guards. With that in mind, real estate values in New York City, because of the illegal alien circumstance allowed by Eric Adams and Governor Hochul, must be plummeting, which then erodes the tax base. You're losing taxpayers because they're moving out of state. You're eroding the real estate values. You've closed businesses because now these business owners have fled and taken their companies with them. And employees have now lost their jobs because they've gone north, south, east, or west. And you write in your articles that New York must eliminate taxpayer-funded privileges such as in-state college, public assistance, to allow free housing for illegal aliens.
Yeah, they're taking away reentry programs for people who had been in prison. They're taking away, free daycare. They're taking away meals for senior citizens. They're cutting everything in half or more so, and taking it just completely away just to find the money, to find the revenue to house these illegal aliens. I mean, what else are they going to do? I mean, New York City's, they're seeing over 1,000 illegal aliens arriving weekly. I mean, they're spending over $8 million daily to house them. And then where you house them becomes these makeshift migrant facilities that are filled with riffraff. I mean, people are fighting. Children are found unresponsive and later pronounced dead. You've got prostitution, drug use. All these things are happening. Those border tent cities we see just north and south of the border are coming to a city near you very soon. And it's only going to be stopped if mayors and governors realize and recognize the impact of sanctuary city policies. And I think, if anything, cities like San Fran, cities like Seattle and Chicago and New York City especially are great. They're a perfect blueprint showing other cities what not to do. But it doesn't, I mean, right now I think we have way too many. There's 12 sanctuary cities across the nation, and there's 146 sanctuary counties. And that alone, the counties really gets me. And sometimes you'll find them very randomly. And sometimes it makes sense. It's adjacent to a massive city. But I think if other states, other elected officials start looking at these failing cities as a blueprint on what not to do, we might be able to see some change. The states have a lot more power than they recognize.
Yeah, but Eric Adams thinks that he can take these illegal aliens from his city that he invited there, that he can then bus them into other areas in New York State, and they have to accept them. No matter what size that area is, whether or not they can financially afford it in their budget, or if they even had facilities to care for them, that doesn't even come into play. He just says, you're going to take them. And as you said, 32 counties are going to be suing him. How many counties are in New York State? I don't know. I know there's 42 here in South Carolina.
I know there's 100 in North Carolina. I'm not sure how many there are up in New York. But I mean, what these liberal cities have done is they've incentivized mass illegal immigration. Well, it starts at the federal level. Biden has incentivized mass legal immigration, and then once they're here, these cities incentivize, hey, come here. We've got all the things you need. We've got your schooling, we've got your housing, we've got your clothes, we've got your food. I mean, why not? And so they go there. And then the only way to curb this is to stop incentivizing it. We can't rely on the federal government to suddenly close its porous borders, but we can certainly close down the state's borders. We can certainly say, hey, in this city, it's not going to be as easy as it is for you somewhere else. And Florida just passed a law where basically they've banned out-of-state driver's license that were issued specifically to illegal immigrants, and that lack of permanent legal status. And that's going to get rid of I think I saw the numbers. It's over 60,000 unlawful drivers, and so these people aren't going to want to, they're going to say, hey, well, Florida's not the state for us. If California, if Illinois, if New York, if they started doing things like that, little tiny things, I'm not saying, we're suddenly not going to give in-state tuition to DACA recipients or something. That's a much bigger hoopla and a much bigger hoop to jump through. But little things like that, like getting rid of banning people without a state driver's license. If they're an illegal alien, you're not going to see as many illegal aliens in your state or in your city looking for work and driving on your roads. It's little things states can do, and they're not. But the states who do it, their taxes are great. their people are happy, their crime is lower. It's a no-brainer, but it's such a politicized issue that it's so political that they'd rather put their own people, their own citizens of their cities or of their state at jeopardy, because they don't want people to call them xenophobic. They don't want people to call them racist. They don't want people to say, hey, well, you must not like immigrants. And people really got to get past that lens, and they've got to keep pushing through and do what's right for their citizens, not citizens of Guatemala or Venezuela or Ecuador or anything like that.
Yeah. Now, I'm going through your website. I came across this seminar that's going to be going on July 31st called Catch, Release, and Then What? Tell us about that. And are you part of that?
I hope to put it together. I'm not going to be speaking or anything, but yeah, it's going to be a fun thing.
I knew you had your thumb in there.
Yeah. We've been trying to get people out to come to it. I've been sending around information about it. It's going to be, like you said, it's half a day of July, and we're going to be having, it's going to feature Andrew Arthur, Don Rosenberg, and Tom Homan. I'm pretty close to Tom. He's a visiting fellow in our Border Security and Immigration Center. But Don Rosenberg, he's the president for Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime. They do great work. It's very niche, specialized work, but it's something that the mainstream media doesn't talk about, victims of illegal aliens crime, and Don does. And I really like his company and what they do. And then Andrew, he's a resident fellow at the CIS, Center for Immigration Studies. Yes, and he's actually a former immigration judge. These are all three very smart men. It's going to be hosted by my colleague Simon, and you can sign up on the Heritage website. You can attend virtually, or you can come in person. There's going to be a brief luncheon afterwards. Everybody's welcome. So I really do want to spread the word on that. It's basically highlighting the over 2 million illegal immigrants that have been released into the nation since Biden, and the now pushing 2 million gotaways that have snuck in, and basically trying to shed light on how everybody should be concerned about it, and that it shouldn't be a politicized topic, but unfortunately it is. And we also just had a screening at Heritage for The Sound of Freedom. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes, and someone told me about that the other day, and I'm dying to see it. I wish I knew you had a screening. I would have tuned in. Was that on Heritage TV?
I don't think the screening, because I'm in immigration, so I'm no expert on policy laws when it comes to screening movies. But I think if we had a showing and then put it up virtually, there would have been some kind of bylaws or something. How that was probably illegal. But it's a great film, and they did so well. They weren't expecting the millions. I think their first day they made like 14 million, and they were expecting maybe 10 million across the first week. So they've done so well that you can actually go online and you can find a theater near you that's showing it, and you can get free tickets if you want. And so they've done so well that they want everybody to see it. So you can definitely go and find it. And it was a great movie. It's a hard watch at some points though.
Well, I was trying to get a bunch of my people from my tea party, and I was going to send out an email over the weekend to see if I can get a bunch of people and get a date set and get the tickets. I do want to get it seen. But back to the Catch and Release, is there a fee for this?
Oh, no, not at all.
It is free. Oh, nice.
It's free.
Nice.
So, register virtually, come in person, put some faces to names, and we'd be really happy to have everybody who's listening right now come on out.
Do you work with FAIR at all?
Yeah, I do. I work closely with FAIR.
All right, because I went last April, not this year, but the year before, to their seminar, the 2-day seminar they had out in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was thinking about them when I was looking at this for the Catch, Release, and Then What. But yeah, it's great. Now, Curtis, I heard you humping in the background. Go ahead, ask your question.
I was just going to say I got to screen the movie 2 weeks ago when I was in D.C. at the Road to Majority event, special screening. And it was a great movie. It's terrible, the child trafficking that goes on, but it's an important movie, and I think everyone should see it and know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Now, we've only got a few minutes left. This whole show is going so fast despite all of our technical difficulties. But your friend Tom Homan also wrote an article about Mayorkas. and how he broke our immigration system from inside out. And I know earlier this year, I believe it was, articles of impeachment were placed against him. Is anything going to happen with that? Are we going to see him finally ousted, or is this going to be completely a debacle?
Yeah, no, so he did. He wrote that article. It's a good one. And we just had Green, House Homeland, Rep. Green. He came out and he spoke at Heritage, and there's going to be a 5-part hearing. So a hearing that's going to go, well, I guess 5 hearings is the best way to say it. And we get that question a lot. Why hasn't Mayorkas been impeached? And it's a slow process. It's tedious, and it needs to be very specific. You know, it's not just it's not easy to impeach someone. And so when he spoke to us, he said basically we're gonna start with the first hearing. It's going to be on dereliction of duty, basically how he doesn't do his job, and he knows he doesn't do his job correctly, and how it's purposeful. And so that's one reason why he merits, being impeached. And then the second one's going to be about how the border crisis facilitates the success of the drug cartels. How the two work very closely hand in hand. Then we're going to go into the third hearing. It's going to be about the human cost. We're going to have, mothers and fathers of people who have lost their kids to fentanyl overdoses. And then we're going to go into the financial costs, the cost of mass illegal immigration on each state, on the cities, on taxpayers as a whole. And then the last hearing will be on departmental fraud within the Department of Homeland Security. So there's a blueprint, there's a roadmap that we're going about, and Green, he's definitely leading the House Homeland Security Committee on that, and I can't wait for the first hearing to come out. We've had a couple Mayorkas related hearings before. We've had him on the stand, of course, and he just shoots himself in the foot over and over and over, and it's about time that something come of it. He certainly merits impeachment, and so.
I was just wondering if you would throw perjury in there. Let's see a little jail time for a Fed.
Yeah, I know that's one of the hardest things to prove in the court of law, but I'd say he merits that as well.
I mean, just to see him led away in handcuffs. I mean, you've got the anti-Trumpers waiting to see him led in handcuffs. Let's put it on the other side of the fence. There's quite a few, Hillary.
For sure.
Well, it is fun having you back, and we really did miss you. But you had great people that fill in. But you got to let us know what you're working on, and that way we can have you back and talk again. I expect to see you next week.
For sure, certainly.
Well, I guess Andy got knocked out. But anyway, it was great having you here today, Hannah, just to see us, the co-hosts. And as she said, we'd like to have you back again. Yeah, and interesting conversation. Speaking of New York, I was up there about a week and a half ago, and we went to a beach, me and my brothers. I think it was Long Island Beach or something like that.
No, there's no Long Island Beach. Okay,
then Long Beach.
Yeah, Long Beach is a town, yes.
Yeah, and because I'm not in New York.
She's back. She's got her map.
But anyway, we didn't go on the beach because they charge $15. I'm like, what madness is this? I'm from Florida. We go on any beach for free. But up there, $15, so we just walked the boardwalk. So,
Yeah, I went down to the Carolina shore, and I noted that a bunch of places that used to be free to park most certainly were not anymore, and it's very expensive. It's very expensive to enjoy the scenery, I guess. But no, they're not charging to get on the beach yet. The day that comes, oh my goodness.
Well,
I don't know what I'll do.
Next time you come down to South Carolina, you let me know. I'll show you around. No worries.
Cool thing. Sounds great. And next week I'll talk to you about that canoe business that's trying to file lawsuits against Abbott.
Oh,
because of the buoy wall.
Oh, please do. The floating wall that he's putting up. I love it. Gotta love it. Gotta think outside the box. Well, Hannah, people can find you at heritage.org, and your articles are also up on the Daily Signal, which Heritage Foundation runs. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for having a great sense of humor and patience.
Thank you for having me. See you next week.
All right, take care.
All right, take care.
All right. Hannah Davis, find her at heritage.org. And this has been the complete snafu of one end of the other. If they don't get me at the front of the show, they get me at the end of the show. But we are going to, I definitely have to now get the new system up and running, and I will probably try to work on that all this week, Curtis. May end up having you and I do a couple practice runs because this has gotten out of hand. This format no longer is working for us. And I don't know if it's because we're conservative, they want us off the air or what, but we're going to go another avenue here. So you guys listen to us. Just make sure you check out the Southern Sense website. Just remember there's a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com. I will post up whatever is there once we get it fully up and running. So instead of signing into Blog Talk Radio, you don't have to sign into anything on my page. You just open it up and join the chat. And that's how easy it is. All right, but we'll get it done. We'll get it done. And next week we have Robert Bork Jr. coming back on the show. So we'll have an exciting show next week. We already know that Dr. Miriam Grossman is going to be joining us, and we'll see if we can get Jacqueline and Toboroff to come back on because we missed her.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mark must be working on a huge story because he's usually here unless he gets himself involved in a big article or big story going on. So something's going to happen at the Epoch Times, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it is. But that's all we got for today. So, Curtis, I guess we'll say good night and God bless. And I guess we'll close out with the song from our friend Gary Pecorella, Save America. So until then, Curtis, we'll talk later. All right.
All right.
God bless.
Take care, all.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Mourn for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom I fought for is granted us. I hope it's not too late to save
90
America.
seconds.
Rescue her, you know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their eyes. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue.
60.
That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom I fought for is granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America.
Seconds.